Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tiesenghausen. May 23rd, here are the main news stories at this moment. Today is Ukrainian Marine Corps Day. I sincerely congratulate everyone involved on this holiday. Now, I know many of you personally, so dear Marines, happy holiday to you. And let's continue with some good news. Novorossiysk is under attack. The oil terminal in Sheskharis is on fire. The oil storage facility at Grushevaya Balka is burning. Satellites are detecting a serious fire at the oil loading terminal. Grushevaya Balka is part of the Sheskharis transshipment complex in Novorossiysk. And this complex itself is one of the largest oil terminals in Russia on the Black Sea. This complex is the final point of Russia's main oil pipelines in the south. It handles the reception, storage, and export of oil. And as for Grushevaya Balka, I believe it's the largest oil storage facility in the Caucasus. Its capacity is over 1 million tons. And all these facilities have been attacked by our drones. Overall, the significance of this facility for Russia is enormous. In fact, the port of Novorossiysk is like the needle of Koshchei for Putin. So this is a very serious problem for him. Soon we will have data on what exactly burned there. But the oil terminal and the oil depot are not all there is. Last night in Novorossiysk, they also struck Russian ships. A Project 1239 missile ship on an air cushion took a hit, as did the frigate Admiral Essen, our old acquaintance, which has already been attacked by drones multiple times. I think sooner or later our drones will finish it off. And Admiral Essen will follow the cruiser Moskva to the bottom. But that's still not all. Today, drones attacked the Russian chemical giant Metafrax Chemicals in the settlement of Gubacha in the Perm region, one of the largest producers of methanol and urea in the Russian Federation. This plant is enormous, located 1,600 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Just imagine that distance in a straight line. This plant produces methanol, formaldehyde, and urea, which are used not only in the chemical industry, but also in the production of explosives. The capacity of this enterprise is about 1 million tons of methanol per year, but that's still not all. At the same time, the IRGI Scientific Center is burning in Irkutsk. RedMet, which specializes in technologies for processing rare earth and precious metals, important for electronics and Russia's military-industrial complex. This is how it happens, all of this in just one night at the port. Of course, this is very painful for Putin. Now the northern ports will be next. They will be attacked again. In general, it seems that Putin has been left speechless. Just this morning, I came across a video where Putin simply can't pronounce the words. This is not a joke. I'm going to show you this video now, but maybe there are doctors watching. Among my subscribers, and I think there definitely are some, lately, some strange metamorphoses have been happening with the balding jellyfish. First of all, he's started to lisp a lot and can't pronounce words properly. Obviously, it's old age. But there's one interesting nuance that I noticed. The nasally moth is either way too energetic, like at the parade. For example, on May 9th, his eyes were almost glassy, as if something was driving him, I don't know what. Or on the contrary, like in China, he can barely drag his feet in his little heeled shoes. Maybe these are different versions of replicants, or maybe it's some kind of invigorating, I don't know, combat capsule that pumps him up. And when the effect wears off, he can barely pronounce the words. Watch this video.
В их честь, в их поддержку. На счет 3. Громко так, чтобы они услышали. Троекратное ура. 3. Ура! Ура! Ура!
What kind of sounds is he making? What? What is that? His jaw dropped. What's going on? It would be interesting to read comments from professional doctors, so don't hesitate, write what you see. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important, and you can do it right now. We're fighting Putin's propaganda here, so let's do it together. Be sure to subscribe. The mood in Moscow is changing rapidly. If just a year ago the Russian capital lived with a sense of stability and hardly felt the consequences of the war, now fear and fatigue have set in. They are becoming the new reality. This is what the Telegraph writes. After large-scale Ukrainian drone attacks on Moscow, residents for the first time felt en masse that the war is not somewhere far away. It's right here and now. It has returned to where it came from. Against this backdrop, many experts say that Putin will soon face a difficult choice. either gradually wind down the war, freeze it, or shift Russia onto a harsher mobilization track. In Russia itself, words that were recently taboo on the streets are being heard more and more often. Some are even saying, let's end the war. Let's end it now. Can you imagine before it was all about, we must, yes, victory, but now you see how opinions have changed. And here is a very important point. Many people in Moscow, and not just in Moscow, but throughout the Russian Federation, were satisfied with everything until it started hitting them. And it happened very suddenly somehow. And it's really frightening when, for the first time, Muscovites hear the sound of a drone, and not just one, when the air defense systems are booming. And the drone is still flying and changing altitude, and it's the first time they're experiencing all these details, these nuances. It changes altitude, and it feels like it's screaming and diving down. Everyone is dropping to the ground, running somewhere, scattering into basements. The Pantsir is thundering, the windows are shaking. It's terrifying. In Moscow, in the Moscow region, and Muscovites are like, hey, this isn't what we agreed on. We just wanted to watch the war on TV. But that's not all. And it's only going to get worse from here. Soon they'll be sitting in basements in Moscow, going down into metro stations. Just like people in Kharkiv, in Sumy, in the frontline cities of Ukraine, children will be evacuated from Moscow. This isn't just some random drone that got lost. All the air defense rings around the Moscow region and Moscow have been breached, and more will come. There will be even more massive raids, guaranteed. This is the new reality for Muscovites. So now drones are reaching their targets, all the way to Moscow whenever necessary and in large numbers. Air raid sirens, shelters, get ready. Sleepless nights in parking garages are the next stage of life for Muscovites. But there is one big difference between Ukrainians and Russians. Well, not just one, there are many, but this one stands out. Ukrainians have no choice. They are on their own land, defending their own land. Russians, on the other hand, came to our land even though they have 17 million square kilometers of their own. Territories, 2/3 of which are simply uninhabited. Yet they came here. Why do you need this war, Russians? Just ask yourself that question. Why do you need a scorched Donbass? Piles of bricks where cities used to be. Why do you need them? You definitely won't rebuild them, will you? I guarantee you can't even fix your own schools. Your ceilings and walls are collapsing there. You won't rebuild Donbass. But when Russians accept the stage where they realize this war isn't really worth it at such a cost, that, it was all the authorities, it was Putin, they know better over there, that's how it was. When they reach that stage, then comes the understanding that Putin got into this war but can't get out of it. Russians, including Muscovites, will be saying on the streets that it's time to end this. That's it, the front has stalled, Ukrainian drones keep coming, there are more and more of them, we're scared, it's really frightening, it's time to end this. But Putin can't end this war. He got in, but he can't get out. And he will keep killing Russians, destroying Russia and making Russians' lives even worse. But the question is, for what? Everyone can already see that Putin has simply made a mess of things. Even Russians themselves can see it now. By the way, friends, in every episode we have an important fundraiser for the Ukrainian Defense Forces. This episode is no exception. We are continuing to raise funds for the 1st Medical Battalion. We are raising money for ventilators, which are critically lacking at the front for advanced surgical teams. Our medics, our guardian angels, have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Апарат штучної вентиляції легень – не просто медичне обладнання, це шанс на порятунок та життя для пацієнта. В умовах бойових дій, де потік поранених часто є раптовим і непередбачуваним, таких апаратів потрібно дуже багато. До того ж, вони мають властивість ламатися та виходити з ладу від високого навантаження. Разом із каналом Бориса Тізенгаузена ми вже зібрали на 4 таких апарати, але цього все ще недостатньо для передових хірургічних груп нашого підрозділу. Тому ми оголошуємо збір ще на 2 апарати. Ми щиро дякуємо Борису та його глядачам за допомогу, небайдужість і увагу до питань порятунку українських захисників.
Let's help our combat medics. In this case, your donation directly saves the lives of our defenders. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There are options for Mono, Privat, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. If you're watching on another channel, there's a QR code. It also leads to the fundraiser. And it's very symbolic that this morning, on the day of the Ukrainian Marine Corps, we completed the fundraiser for the 37th Marine Brigade for drones. Thank you so much. You are simply incredible. I will tell you this every time. Thank you. And now a little about mental health. This morning, I managed to drop by the All-Ukrainian Strategic Forum of Psychologists, a very necessary and timely event. The organizers are truly brilliant. They deserve words of gratitude. But I tip my hat to all the psychologists who help keep us from losing our minds. In a way, we are even colleagues with them. Calm Analytics, by the way, also does its best to preserve your mental health, but there are those who do it professionally. They deserve honor and praise. Here's another interesting piece of news. Some Russians didn't believe that Crimea and the southern group of occupiers would be cut off from supplies. But here, the occupation authorities themselves have confirmed it. As they say, beware, Crimea is closing down. The head of the occupied part of Kherson region, a rare scoundrel with an Aldo, has banned the movement of most trucks through the Chonhar checkpoint, that is, into Crimea. He made exceptions for the military, special cargo, and so on. Everyone else, goodbye. That's it, it's over, they fought enough. In other words, in this way, the Russians have effectively admitted that the land corridor to Crimea is officially under Ukrainian fire control. Let me remind you that the main potential achievement for Moscow during this war was considered to be the creation of a land corridor to Crimea. Remember, someone once asked Putin, so what are the achievements? And then, with his nasty grandfatherly chuckle, he laughed and said, well, the Sea of Azov is now an internal sea of Russia. So look, they created a land corridor to Crimea. That's it. There's no land corridor anymore. Soon, not even special cargo will be able to pass through there. So the reality is this. Ukrainian drones are already over the corridor. Civilian entry is prohibited. These same drones will soon be circling over the Crimean bridge as well. The ferry crossing to Crimea has been destroyed. There are no ferries. No complex explosive or flammable cargo is being transported across the Crimean bridge. The land corridor will soon be cut off. How are you going to deliver anything to occupied Crimea now? Ukrainian drones are already over Melitopol and Mariupol. The question of when they will be flying over Kerch is just a matter of time. There in Crimea, literally every night, parts of the air defense system are being destroyed, and this also means that the southern group of the Russian Federation and the occupying forces in Crimea are actively being cut off from supplies. Believe me, some of those sniveling collaborators are already taking their families out of Crimea. They understand where all this is heading. And now gasoline has disappeared in Crimea, and not just in Crimea. Today news came in that there are also major problems with gasoline in the Ryazan region, and I said it would only get worse. Now Lukashenko has decided to raise his voice, snapping back directly. Have you noticed I don't react at all to the chatter coming from Kyiv, including from President Zelensky? In this case, I'm trying to sympathize with him. There's a war going on, anything can happen. He's under a lot of pressure, but unfortunately, he doesn't want to draw any conclusions or analyze the situation. Lukashenko stated, "You'd be better off keeping quiet and praying to your great tuber that your turn doesn't come." Once already, the Russians attacked from Belarusian territory. So that's it. You are marked by this war. You are stained with the blood of those whom the Russians killed in Ukraine. And Ukrainians will never forget this. It was those very Russian units that entered from Belarus that later committed atrocities in Bucha and elsewhere. And Lukashenko also repeated his statement that Belarus would only be drawn into the war if Ukraine attacks it. But then, according to Lukashenko, the Republic of Belarus will defend itself not only with its own troops, but the Russian Federation will also help them. The Russian army will help, but what Russian army? The one that's all fighting in Ukraine? Trying to scare Ukraine with the Russian army is not much of an idea. We ourselves are not going to get involved in the war in Ukraine, and there is no need for it, neither civilian nor military. You lying bastard! The mustachioed chip said exactly the same things right before the war. Really? It's just exercises. What are you talking about? Come on, seriously, we don't need this. Of course we don't. And then the columns just rolled right in here. And here Zelensky simply threatened Lukashenko with a preemptive strike. That's why he started to panic. Lukashenko knows another very sad secret for himself. If something serious suddenly happens, the Belarusian army won't fight for him. He doesn't really want to run away to Moscow like Assad did, although he's already set up a little house for himself in the Moscow suburbs. It's no coincidence that Lukashenko's son Kolenka studied in China. There's probably definitely some kind of backup airfield there. Well, during his visit to China, Putin practically stopped short of kissing Xi Jinping's feet. I think that if tomorrow China simply took a third of the Russian Federation for itself, no one would even make a sound. Then Putin will still be on TV saying, oh, come on, they'll just live there. They're our brothers. They'll stay for a little while, a couple of centuries. What's the big deal? Just imagine one day someone will hit Putin on the head with a snuff box, and it will turn out that he was systematically destroying Russia, deliberately driving it into crippling dependence on China because he was an agent of the Celestial Empire. Doesn't it seem just like that? After all, there have been top traitors from the KGB in history. Recently, I came across a very interesting story about one of these top KGB traitors whose name is not very popular in Russia, especially among the Russian special services. Vladimir Vetrov, a traitor defeated by passion. It's a very short but very interesting story. I read it and thought maybe you would find it interesting too. In 1981, the very year I was born, one man inflicted more damage on Soviet intelligence than all CIA operations over the previous decade. His name was Vladimir Vetrov, a KGB colonel specializing in scientific and technical intelligence. The French gave him the codename Farewell. In the autumn of 1982, a rumor about an unprecedented incident spread throughout Moscow. Supposedly, a KGB officer had been arrested and convicted for a domestic murder allegedly out of jealousy. Earlier that same year, French intelligence lost its most valuable agent. By comparing certain details, the French in Paris concluded that the convicted man was none other than their agent, Farewell. The French were not mistaken at that time. An extremely rare case in the practice of espionage. The agent was not exposed through his own fault. He simply committed a crime in a fit of passion. Vetrov knew the West. In the 60s, he worked in Paris, spoke French, wore good suits, drank decent wine, then returned to Moscow and, as they say, felt the difference. His disappointment had been building up for years. To this day, there are differing theories as to why Vetrov began spying for the French. Some say he was caught on a hook. The Soviet version is that he was simply morally corrupt, a drunkard. Well then, why did they keep him in the KGB? But the fact remains, in 1981, he approached a French businessman, handed over his first folder, and over the next year and a half, nearly 4,000 documents. A complete list of all Soviet agents in the West, 250 officers, the full structure of operations for stealing Western technologies. In short, a colossal amount of information. Among the information Vetrov passed to the West was a complete diagram of the organization of Soviet efforts in scientific and technical intelligence. That is, Vetrov reported on objectives and achievements. Vetrov also revealed the names of 70 KGB sources in 15 Western countries and 450 Soviet intelligence officers who were engaged in gathering scientific and technical information. Can you imagine what an explosion this caused? The information he provided led to the expulsion of nearly 150 Soviet intelligence officers from various Western countries. Just from France, 47 agents were expelled. And the French intelligence service personally handed the materials over to Reagan. At the G7 summit in 1982, Reagan distributed lists of Soviet agents to the Allies, and they began expelling them all across Europe. Dozens of spy networks collapsed. But it wasn't the KGB that caught Vetrov. What ruined him? He ruined himself. Probably that's how it was. In February of 1982, drunk in a car outside Moscow, he got into a fight with a female colleague with whom he was having an affair, hit her with a bottle, tried to finish her off with a screwdriver, but the colleague broke free and ran away. A random passerby tried to intervene and Vetrov stabbed him in the heart with a knife. His colleague survived. Vetrov was arrested, and at the trial, he was charged with attempted murder and sentenced to 15 years. But then they started digging deeper and found things that made everyone's hair stand on end at the KGB. More precisely, Vetrov himself helped with that. KGB officers were monitoring the investigation process. Understandably, soon, Vetrov, fearing that the French intelligence services, whom he was constantly in contact with, meeting in parks and other places, would start searching for him and expose him, became frightened. And he wrote a letter to his wife asking her to inform certain people about what was happening. The letter was intercepted by KGB officers, and in 1985, when the investigation was already completed, he was simply executed for treason. In Paris, he is still remembered as one of the most valuable sources of the Cold War era. But in Russia, all is quiet and calm. It's better not to mention Vetrov's name. Well, surely there can't be such traitors in the KGB and later the FSB. Oh, but there can. Just look at Putin, who is about to push your dear Russia right into the abyss. And as for you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I urge you, let's help our combat medics, our guardian angels. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.